Thanks so much for joining me today. My name is Eileen Chevalier and I created the typewriter alphabet flashcards, and we are going to study some botany today and look at more leaves. What makes a leaf a leaf? Why do so many people think that the bract of a peace lily is a petal instead of a leaf? In today's lesson, we're going to take a look at some different leaves and try to figure out how to identify a leaf as a leaf. So go ahead and get out your materials. You're going to need your journal, of course, and the typewriter alphabet flashcards. Today we are going to look at the 8 card because that shows us 8 bracts. And bracts are a tricky leaf type. So a lot of times they get mistaken for other things. And then, of course, we're going to need our big, gorgeous DK Smithsonian Flora book. It has a great pictures of different types of bracts. So if you want to get out your journal, I will read the definition for today for you. Bract, modified leaf at the base of a flower or flower cluster that protects the buds or attracts pollinators. All right, so let's do some questioning and investigating. Reread the definition of a leaf. Flat structures extending from the stem that are responsible for photosynthesis. So what modification happens to make the bract distinct from a common leaf? And why are bracts still considered leaves? You can have your own thoughts about this. I've thought about this a lot. Like, there are so many modified leaves on plants and they have all these different names, and so it makes it a little bit tricky. And really, bracts, look, a lot of times they're more brown and we don't really think of them like as a leaf. So when we studied leaves and we looked at the margins and the venation and the arrangement and all these things, that most of those don't really apply when we're talking about the bracts. They have such a specific job, and it's really just to protect the flower. Although there are bracts in other parts as well. So the other really tricky thing about bracts is that sometimes they're just show-offs. So if you think of like a poinsettia or a peace lily, they are just super showy flower parts that they're so bright and colorful, and oftentimes when a plant has a really showy bract, they have tiny, boring flowers. Not boring, but I mean, we can't really see them, so we don't really think much about them, right? So poinsettia has really tiny flowers just at the top of that stem, and the peace lily actually has a really long piece that all of the tiny, tiny, tiny flowers are around. And that whole thing is covered by the bract, or surrounded by the bract. So I actually read a book and it said that flower had 1 petal, which is not true at all. That's not a petal, it's a bract. And it actually has so many petals because every single one of those tiny little florets has petals on it. So gotta watch out, and you gotta just not make assumptions when you look at something. Like, sometimes it seems obvious that it's one thing, but a really important thing that I can tell you about petals versus bracts. If you ever see a plant and you're like, wow, it has 2 petals. No, it doesn't. There's no flower that has only 2 petals, and there's no flower that has only 1 petal. You're seeing something else. So it could be the sepal, it could be a bract. Like, it has to be something else, or something happened to the flower and it lost some of its parts. So if you know that, then when you see things, then you're not as likely to be tricked by that. All right, if you look at the number 8 card, you will see the bracts there. And if you remember in the definition, I said that it surrounded the flower or flower cluster. So we're going to look at these more when we look at the different inflorescences of flowers. And this is actually a flower cluster, so there's tons of flowers. So these bracts are surrounding all of those. All right, let's look in Flora for the next question. I'm going to show you the page first so you can kind of get a visual. So here you're going to see bract types. And I'll just read you this really quickly from in here. Plants form many different types of bracts, positioned beneath or around flowers and inflorescences. Some bracts resemble leaves, while others look more like petals. Some bracts are deciduous and fall off before reproduction is complete, while others may be retained for the lifespan of the inflorescence to protect the developing fruit. And they all have different names, right? So we're just going to look at 3 of them. So our second question is 3 types of bracts are spathy, petaloid, and Epicalyx. Examine a peace lily, poinsettia, and hibiscus. Can you identify the bract type? Now, if you're looking at this page, you're going to see them and you're going to know right away. But let's just think about it. The spathe is a large bract around a cluster of some tiny flowers. It's often mistaken for a single petal. So which one would that be? If you guess peace lily, you're correct. That one also often gets mistaken for that. Petaloid, the loid just means like, so it means petal-like. Look closer, it's the small flowers above the petal-like. Look closer to find small flowers above the petal-like bracts. So if you have lots of really beautiful, showy bracts that look like petals, maybe in their size and their shape, those are petaloid. My poor poinsettia is doing really terribly, but I'll show you up close, like one of these. See how they look just like petals, but really the flowers are tiny and right there. So that's going to be your petaloid. And then there's the Epicalyx. So epi means, it has a bunch of different meanings. It's like a really confusing prefix. It can mean near, on, before, and after. Calyx is the group of sepals located just under the petals. Sepals are a modified leaf part as well, and they will surround the flower before it opens. So when you look at a lot of, like if you're ever looking at eudicots, you'll see the petals and then you'll see something underneath them that is, these don't have a good example. Oh wait, they do. Maybe if I can bring this close enough to you, you'll be able to see the sepals. So if you look there at the green parts that are surrounding, I'm trying to get it to focus, right below the flower. So those green pieces, this is a eudicot, so it has very distinct petals and sepals. So the whole thing, so in that one flower, all the petals are called the corolla, and then the entire, all of the sepals together are called the calyx. So that whole green section there at the base of the flower was the calyx. So if it's called Epicalyx, that means it's like on or near or before or after the calyx. So before or after that little green section. So it's in addition to, but if it can't, so here's your calyx, and then here are your petals, and they have to be right next to each other. So the Epicalyx has to be where? Below. That's the only place it can be, because it's right next to the calyx, but the calyx has to be right next to the petals. So the Epicalyx would be below that. So if you look at a hibiscus, that's what's going on. It has the sepals and the petals, and then below that, there are these extra little bracts, extra little leaf parts, and they're the Epicalyx bracts. So see if you can see those in real life. That's the ideal way. If not, go ahead and look in here and get some great pictures of them. All right, third question. In most plants, leaves are where most of the photosynthesis takes place. This is why they are green. What happens in the fall when the leaves turn colors and fall from plants? Read pages 154 through 55 of Flora to learn more about fall colors. Why don't the leaves fall off when they're green? And do the leaves really turn colors? Where does the yellow come from? Like, where are those colors? Like, do they just, like, in the fall, they kind of like get them from somewhere else? Where are all those colors coming from? So let's look at the gorgeous pictures in this book. Very large, easy to see. So just is showing you the progression of the fall colors. As summer draws to a close, the shorter days and cooler temperatures alert trees and shrubs that they need to prepare for winter. Spectacular displays of colors may follow when chemical changes within the leaves gradually transform them from green to brilliant shades of yellow, orange, and red. So the chlorophyll is what's making the plant green. Yellow and orange shades are caused by carotenoids, which degrade more slowly than green chlorophyll. So the reason that the tree isn't losing its green leaves is because it needs something from them, right? So if that's where photosynthesis is taking place and that's where the sugars are being made, what does the tree need from that plant, from the leaves? What are the leaves giving to the tree? They're giving it sugars because that's what it's making from the sun. But then when the sun, in the winter, the sun isn't as in the sky as much. And so it also takes energy for the tree to keep the leaves alive. It needs, all of the leaves need water so they don't dehydrate. So the tree has to be so busy moving all of this water to the leaves. But if the leaves aren't going to produce enough sugar and enough energy for the plant to draw the water and transport the water and give the water to the leaves, it's just like a math problem, right? So you're losing energy every time. So the tree's going to do the most conservative thing. It's going to drop the leaf and it's just going to go dormant and wait for the days to get longer in spring, and then it'll make a new leaf because that's actually more efficient for the tree. So that leaf knows that it is no longer needed. Its time is over. This happens actually in other plants, not just and even in evergreen plants, like when a leaf isn't needed anymore, like the plant has gotten so large and it's shaded or whatever, the leaves will drop on there as well, and they do the same thing. They turn colors because the chlorophyll, it isn't activated by the sun anymore, so the chlorophyll starts to degrade, and then the carotenoids, which are still, they were present and they still are present, it just takes them longer to degrade, so you see the color longer. Common carotenoids, such as beta-carotene, look orange because they absorb blue and green light and reflect red and yellow. Red-purple colors occur when leaf starches break down into sugars, which react with other chemicals to form anthocyanins. Cyan is the word for, it's like a type of blue. Like if you've ever used a printer, you know what the primary colors are because those are the colors you put in your printer. And can you print red? Yes, you can print red, but you put a red cartridge into a printer. That's because red is a secondary color, which is the opposite of a primary color. What you're putting in is magenta, cyan, and yellow. Those are the three primaries. So quick aside, but that's what that cyanin means in that word. Really fascinating. Some of it is a chemical change, and then some of it is things that were already present that you're now just able to see because the chlorophyll is breaking down faster. So time to do a little bit of journaling. First, find 3 examples of bracts that have different jobs. Record them in your journal and explain what their main job is and if the bracts are mistaken for another flower part. So you can use the 3 that we were talking about earlier, the peace lily, the poinsettia, and the hibiscus, or you can find 3 more that are interesting to you, especially if you have them in front of you. Although leaves look flat to us, they have many layers of cells that perform important jobs. Look at the diagram in Flora on pages 112 through 13 and copy the diagram. Don't worry if you don't know what everything is. You can use this drawing in the photosynthesis and fluid lessons. So those 2 lessons are super packed. So there's a lot to do in those. So if you just go ahead and do that drawing now, then you can refer back to that later on and you'll already have that information there for you. I'll show you. This is such a cool picture. When leaves start to break down, you get to see all their veins. But over here on the side, right here, are the 2 diagrams I'm talking about. So those are the leaf structure. And it just shows what's happening. So if you have a leaf like this and you were to cut it this way and look inside, what's happening this way. So you can see where the veins are going to be running through. Those are described in this diagram. So make sure you write those down. and have them in your journal so that you can use them later. All right, guys, have fun and work on your journal. And remember that your journal is yours. It's just for your documentation, and it's okay to make mistakes. If you're drawing one of these diagrams, do them in pencil first. There's a lot going on. And then once you get the way you want it, you can ink it or color it. But just don't give yourself a hard time. If you totally hate it, skip, go to the next page, do another one. That's just part of the learning process. I'm sure you guys are doing great. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye.